Okay, in chapter 2 of Datatel, the last video that we did, we talked about the contents of this screen here. What I want to do is drill into some of these subscreens and talk to you about how to populate this data. First of all, we're going to start off with the offering info screen. I'm going to click on this little magnifying glass to open that screen up, and here what you're going to see is the how the hours of instruction and how they're distributed in various modalities. I will not have an opportunity to teach you about how to calculate hours or put them to the into course, but Brian Sanders will be an outstanding resource for that. I would say he's one of the best people in the district when it comes to dealing with this information. But what this screen is doing is it's identifying the percentage of the instructor's load that is being used to deliver this portion of the course, as well as the number of hours that the faculty member is getting paid for. The modality over here is the type of instructional method. So a lecture method is different from a lab method. The lecture is the idea of sort of one-way teaching, standing at a lectern, just think literally of a lecturer, and students sitting more passively in a class, whereas down here we have lab. The laboratory is more of an applied setting, and the hour calculations are different from those, and Brian will be able to teach you a great deal about those. This is the percentage of the load as we discussed, and so lab is calculated differently than lecture is. And this is the total number of contact hours. You notice that while we've populated information on the second row of the screen, we only have this value up here. This is going to be the sum of the total hours as indicated on the course outline. So if there are 54 lab hours put on the course outline and 54 lecture hours, this is the sum of those two totals. And this is driven by what's called the Carnegie hours, and the Carnegie hours are what appear on the course outline. This value here is the term, and that's basically the increment of time. So we're just basically saying over the term, this course, teaching this course in the lecture modality will cover 20% of this instructor's load, and the lab modality will cover 15% of that instructor's load for the term. Over here, we have a value that does not appear on the course outline, but there is a definite crosswalk for calculating it. This is what's called the clock hours. In the Yosemite Faculty Association handbook, or YFA handbook, a contract, excuse me, there is an agreement that faculty get paid by the clock hour, which is different than the contact hour, the 54 and 54, which make the sum of 108 over here. These values are calculated out on a different formula because of that agreement. So the faculty technically are getting paid a little less than you would assume for the hours they're being taught. Brian Sanders, again, can be a great resource on, and he probably can explain this much better than I can, but there is a contact hours, clock hours chart that I will be leaving up in this office on the bulletin board, so you can reference it to see how many contact hours should be given for the corresponding number of clock hours. So there you have that. Default number of weeks we're going to have is 16, and all of this information you can pretty much leave blank. But by and large, if the course is only a lecture course, you'll populate only this line for the lecture hours from the course outline, and this line if there's a lab. And I'm just going to hit save because I didn't change anything. All right. I think we can move quickly into restrictions. Restrictions are any of the rules that you put in about the course to make sure that, with the exception of prerequisites and co-requisites, that the student doesn't take a class that he shouldn't take more than once, etc. But we don't do a lot of data population on this field. This is a default value that populates in the class. This is editable at your level. Brian Sanders may take interest in adjusting these values over time, but at this time there is no active practice of setting this value at the course level. A lot of this is done at the section level because it might have to do with the room size for the class or some other factors. But there is a minimum enrollment rule as well that presides, and I would work with Brian Sanders on that as well. The reg retake policy is the number of times that a student can actually take a course after completing it one time. Most courses in the curriculum are not allowed to be repeated, but there is a subset, I'd say probably no more than 30 or 40 courses that state law allows students to repeat. There are a plethora of reference materials on this at the state level. There's a repeatability guidelines document that comes in handy for this, but what you need to know is that colleges through the curriculum process can identify courses as being repeatable up to a certain number or not repeatable depending on the course and what the content of the course is and how it articulates to other institutions. We won't have time to cover that, but I encourage you to call me or your counterpart Heather at Modesto, who can help give you some access to those resources. And this is if the course is allowed for repeat, this is whether or not their grade should be counted for credit. These are default values, instructor consent. We're skipping over these. These generally don't get populated. No, petition required, no, allow audit, no, only pass, no, and yes. These are default, populated by default, these three values right here. These last two fields, however, are where you populate the grading policy that is on the course outline. So if it is an A through F or pass, no pass credit, what you're going to do is type only pass, no pass allowed for this class? No, that means we do not want to restrict students to only a pass, no pass grading system. We want to give both options. Do we want to allow pass, no pass? We can say no, so that it's only A through F grading. There are some courses that are set up that way. So in this case, this is the most common configuration where we're allowing both A through F grading and a pass, no pass option. Understanding that students go through the admissions and records office when they enroll in the class to exercise their right to take a class on a pass, no pass basis. But you are the one who holds the keys for that. And it is very important that you update that in a timely fashion before the sections are built, because once the sections become active, that roll's a bad word, but once the sections become active, this data element cannot be changed. So if there's any issues with that, you want to make sure they're accurate. Okay, we're going to move on to the next video then.